say they're going to come back. They say, we'll still be friends. We'll keep
No,
up.
but I hope you want me back. What if you're like, oh, thank God that bitch is gone?
What I really want to do is a surprise episode next year where you and Awa come back at the same time and just blow everyone's fucking mind.
Yes.
3, 2,
Let's do that.
1. Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Culture Binge. This is the Wisecrack podcast where we use our top-tier algorithmic data to tailor our content directly to the demographic trends of our consumer base. I'm your host, Michael Burns, joined as always by the person who has repeatedly told me that it's okay that she ignores me before the show starts because it's all about the method, Serby. Serby, how are you today?
I'm well. How are you?
Pretty good. And even better because today we're joined by special guest, host of the Show Me the Meaning podcast and the bad boy of Letterboxd, Raymond Kramer. Raymond, how are you today?
That's right, baby. It's me, the bad boy of Letterboxd.
I don't know. I like your Letterboxd presence, so I figured, why not lead with that?
Thanks, buddy. The feeling's mutual.
Yeah, we got some fun stuff to talk about today. We're going to talk about difficult actors, our obsession with Spotify telling us who we are, and more. But first, the last episode, Raymond, I know you were not here for the last episode, but you still were spiritually. Serby actually was. We talked a little bit about Thanksgiving. So I did want to check in. I think anyone who listens to the show knows that I have a sort of a vendetta against traditional Thanksgiving meal consumption. So I'm curious. I want a Thanksgiving report from everyone. What was it like? What did you eat?
So my Thanksgiving was quite mellow. Thanksgiving isn't a huge holiday for my family. I did go to the beach, which was nice.
Great.
I went to my uncle's house. He made enchiladas. And
hell yes.
Yeah. And then I found out that
enchiladas.
that my other relatives in another part of the country, they also had enchiladas. So apparently the Patel family is really big about enchiladas.
The Patel family rules.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I'm so happy for you and your family. Even the most mediocre enchiladas are better than many of the best Thanksgiving fixings and sides. Raymond, how was your Thanksgiving?
It was great. I went over to my cousin's place. She had some friends over, and it was, I think, the first time that I've gone to like a communal event since the pandemic started, and everyone was vaccinated. We were all just really happy to see each other, and had a wonderful meal. She made all the fixins. It was great. And then 2 days later, we did another Thanksgiving at my place because my girlfriend couldn't make it to that one. So we did it upright. I think, yeah, two times in a week. And then about a few months ago on my friend Thad's birthday, we had Thadsgiving because Thanksgiving's his favorite dinner. So I kind of had 3 Thanksgivings this year.
Yay,
Happy
Thad.
birthday, Thad.
Did you have turkey all 3 times?
No, we had turkey for Thadsgiving, as is the tradition, turkey for Thanksgiving, as is the tradition, and then for second Thanksgiving, we had ham, as is the Easter tradition.
Wow, that's fun. I do not mind an Easter ham. Well, that's great. I just wanted to check. I got some feedback after my rant in the last episode, some people being supportive of my call to eradicate traditional Thanksgiving food and reinvent the holiday from the ground up in an act of revolutionary renewal, and others who were defensive over their family traditions. And
what did you do?
I was coming for them. I was out of the country on Thanksgiving. I was in Mexico, and got very lucky that my spouse and I were there at the same time 2 of our other friends were. So we went to a restaurant in Todos Santos, Mexico called Yazamango, and just had like food. There were some places in Mexico that were doing Thanksgiving dinners, but I was like, that seems silly. So, for my Thanksgiving meal, we had a whole roasted fish with some tortillas and really good sauces. Had a pizza, had some raw fish, had some oysters, had some clams.
Jeez.
Had some wine, had really good desserts, and then before bed drank far too much mezcal. And I would say it was great. I liked it. I might be on the whole roasted fish with good sauces and tortilla train from every Thanksgiving from here on out.
Wow.
It was great. No regrets. No regrets at all. Let's see. Sorry, everyone. I looked at the wrong document. One thing I wanted to ask you all about, and it's kind of on a more serious tip before we really get into it, is When, if you haven't already, are you planning to bid on property in the metaverse? And what specific neighborhoods or areas of the metaverse are you hoping to be a landlord in? Raymond, I will start with you.
Sure.
Thoughts on metaverse real estate? How has this affected your life? Are you talking to your finance people, etc.?
Yeah. I've been eyeing some property in Sector 12. I'm obviously not
Fancy
making
boy.
Sector 12. Yeah, I'm not making that kind of money right now, but I don't want to throw a bunch of money away on like Sector 9 or whatever.
Yeah.
If I'm gonna be in a different bracket soon. So I'm weighing my options. Just kind of sitting patiently. I'm observing. I'm gonna see what the market, the metaverse market is so it's always fluctuating.
Always.
And I really think right now it's a little bit boom. Pretty soon it might go bust. And hey, then you know what? You buy the dip. And that's what my friends are telling me. You wait until you can buy the dip. So I think, I've got some like pixel front property in Sector 12 I've been eyeing, but
pixel front.
I'm not quite ready. Not quite ready to commit yet.
Serby, as someone who, and you've mentioned this before, so I'm not, doxing you, as that works in the tech industry. Do you hear people talking about things like this? Or is this just a weird online thing that I'm fascinated by, that people are buying digital real estate in the metaverse?
Yeah, it might just be something that's unique to you, because I haven't heard anything. I would rather read about just about anything else other than this. So I have no idea what any of that means.
That's fantastic. If anyone who's a listener knows about this, I'd love for you to tell us about your experiences with it. I just was utterly fascinated when I found out that it's predicted to be like $1 billion market of people buying property and space in the metaverse. And I say this not to mock those people, to simply say that my tiny brain cannot comprehend this sort of thing. Producer Maddie said, "Same, Serby, LOL." Okay. I don't think that Maddie wanted that to be on here, but I blew up the spot.
You ladies are going to end up in like Sector 5 or something like that.
Wow.
Is that like the best sector, obviously?
It's the best bad sector. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely. I don't know.
Oh, this got a little aggressive. So I want to really change the tone now. Speaking of things that are not metaverse real estate, this is Slaps and Chaps, the part of the show where we talk about something that's slapping, i.e., that is good, or chapping, i.e., that is bad. Serby, let's start with you. What are your slaps and chaps for this first episode of the month of December?
Happy December. My slap is that Emily in Paris returns next week, December 17th. On Netflix, season 2. Check it out. Unfortunately, I am not sponsored by Netflix.
I was about to say, this sounds
only North Face.
This jacket was free. That's the only reason why. I'm not a big North Face fan. I'm very excited about all of that. I loved it last year during the pandemic. I'm loving it now. It helps me disengage from everything. So I'm a big fan, even though it's silly and it's fluffy and doesn't make any sense, but I love it. What chaps is that, should I say it now?
Maybe you should wait.
Okay. What chaps is that I bought a Kindle and Amazon packed it without any packing.
Oh no.
Like anything wrapped around it. They just put it in a box. And now I don't want it. Like, I feel like it's been like tossed around in the box.
Wait, does it work though?
I haven't opened it. Just weirdly, I feel like it's damaged.
But you haven't checked to see if it is.
I haven't checked it out, but I don't want to open it because I'm like, what if they won't let me exchange it? So is it?
They'll let you exchange it. Should you get it and should we open it at the end of the show and you can live reveal if it works or not?
I'm just like, I just don't know. It's an electronic device. Why wouldn't they wrap it up?
I'm curious about this one now. Well, you will have to, whether it's on the show or not, you're going to have to let us know how it pans out. They'll definitely let you return it. Amazon lets you return anything.
And then I feel like I'm so picky that I want to be like, could you please wrap it this time? Like, I only want it if you're going to wrap it up and then send it to me.
I wonder if it's a thing like at a restaurant. Sometimes you ask to, like, you send something back and they're like, oh yeah, of course. But it just means they throw your meat in the microwave for 10 seconds and put it back on the same plate. And I wonder if in this instance, you send it back, they take the exact one you didn't want, wrap it in some stuff, send it back to you.
Right, exactly. That's what I was wondering. And as someone with food allergies, when this is my greatest fear, when I say like, "Oh, you put this on there, I'm allergic to that. Like, could you like please don't put that on my food?" And I send it back. I'm always curious, like, did you just pick it off? Like, am I
No,
gonna
no
eat
one wants you to die. I feel like at a restaurant's not gonna do that. I feel like if
I
you like
know.
complain about how something's cooked, then they kind of don't give a shit.
Mm.
But no one wants you to die because then that
Mm.
reflects poorly on them, and then you don't tip because you're dead.
And you'll
Well,
be
you
able to
know how I
tell
feel
if
about tipping
your
in
Kindle
general.
was put in
Let's not
So.
get how Serby feels about tipping. I'm not ready for that today. Raymond, how about you? Slaps and chaps.
I guess what slaps for me is all these Christmas tunes. Can't get enough of them.
Mariah?
Sure, Mariah Carey. She's singing her heart out. Last Christmas by Wham is my go-to. I can't get enough of it.
That's a good one.
I don't listen the other 11 months of the year because it's a Christmas song. But during December, I can't get enough of this. And then what's Wonderful Christmas Time by your Paul McCartney there. A fine song. And then what's the other one John Lennon sings? We love it.
Merry Christmas.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then the David Bowie Bing Crosby duet.
Oh, that rules.
Little
Baby,
Drummer
it's cold
Boy.
outside.
Baby, it's cold outside. And then I don't know if you've seen this, Burns, but it's right up your alley. Will Ferrell and John C. Reilly do a shot-for-shot recreation of David Bowie and Bing Crosby's Little Drummer Boy video.
I don't know if I've seen that or I haven't seen it in a while. I'm going to watch that immediately after this because, as you said, that is very much up my alley.
It's the best. It's a Funny or Die video from the Step Brothers era, and they play it totally straight, doing their mediocre impersonations of David Bowie and Bing Crosby, and I watch it every year. So I can be a little bit of a Grinch sometimes. Christmas isn't my favorite holiday, but when it does come around, I do my best to get in the spirit of things.
Speaking of Grinch stuff, what's your chap?
My chap, well, should I say it? Should I say it or should I?
You should wait. Say the other one. Say the other one, yeah.
Okay, so the other one for me is very upset about Serby's Kindle.
Oh yeah, I know, right?
I wanted to get back. I wanted to circle back around to this Kindle.
Circle back to this Kindle.
I was so excited.
I've got a Kindle, and they're great. You can store a bunch of books on there. Phenomenal. And it breaks my heart to think that yours would have been, who knows, shaken up, stepped on,
just tossed about, smacked around, thrown up and down,
dipped in wax. Who knows?
Just a waxed up Kindle. That's great.
So can I go back to the music thing? There's a really good song that you should check out. I forget exactly what it's called. I think it's something like Bells, Bows, something. But it's really fun. You should check it out.
Something.
Bells, Bows, something. Yeah, but just Google Bells, Bows song.
Okay.
And it'll come up.
I'm gonna do that right now and see if I can work this out.
I will say there's a song that's called something like It's Christmas, Time to Get Crunk. And it was from some C-level Atlanta rap group in the early 2000s. And me and my little sister used to love putting it on when my family would have like a nice Christmas gathering. And we would always slip it on there. And mom and dad would be very upset because they were not my parents were not adjacent to the crunk movement, I think, initiated by Lil Jon and his affiliates in Atlanta. But if you want to look that up, it's a fun one. I'll do my slaps and chaps real quick. Slaps. This is kind of stepping on Raymond's territory. And by that, I mean maybe show me the meaning type territory. But I've really been enjoying a lot of good non-IP content recently. I've seen a few movies that I've really liked recently, none of which have been based on any previous IP or a comic book or that aren't remakes. And we're entering this era now where already there's all this talk that like being the Ricardos is going to win all the awards. And I'm just like, A, Aaron Sorkin, don't care. B, like I just like original storytelling. I like people that have ideas, that are expressing themselves, that give actors the opportunity to do something interesting. So I love it. I appreciate it. It just made me really happy recently. Even some of the non-IP movies that are just fine, it's just great to see them. Oh. That said, we all know that I am someone that appreciates Marvel stuff as much as anyone, but oh boy. Oh boy, give me some non-IP
Enjoy those
content.
movies now because they will be considered strictly contraband in the metaverse, Michael.
You know what? I really believe that. I really believe that. So yeah, go watch some non-IP content, everyone. My chaps. Okay, here's the thing. We talk about eating sometimes on the show. There's a thing. It's been happening for a while. I've noticed a lot recently. A lot more people during the pandemic have started placing orders at restaurants that are for pickup or delivery. What happens now is you will physically go to a place and they are unable to adequately serve you as an in-person customer because they are overwhelmed by the amount of online pickup and delivery orders that come in. And I don't like it. And I think, you know what? We all got used to like the pickup, the ease of it, the whatever. Maybe just go back into a place and talk to someone. This is happening at your Chipotle's, at other fast casual places. You show up, there's no line. You think, I'm in. But then you see some of these employees bust an ass to do all these online orders. Also, I think as well, you're going to get better service if you go in person, because if I'm working the line at Chipotle and I have like the 9th person in 5 minutes to put in some super complicated order, I'm giving you the tiniest amount of guac you've ever seen in your life. So yeah, that's a chat for me. Before we get into our
pretty good.
Update
really
also update on Bell's books Gifts Trees
Yes.
by Todrick Hall.
Yes,
I'll have to
really
give this a
good.
listen.
It's a fun song.
Gift trees. Awesome. So speaking of gifts, it would be a gift to us if you liked and subscribed to this podcast, if you left a nice review on iTunes or whatever the place of your choosing is. We would like you to have fun with the reviews. I know that I say we'll do this. I'm going to say now as a reminder, producer Maddie, if we're not doing that, let's make sure we're checking to see if there's new reviews regularly. So if there's any fun stuff, we can read it on the show, because I promised that, and I worry that I might have been lying. So please do that. It means a lot to us. It A, helps us keep making the podcast. B, helps more people find the podcast. This is all meaningful to us, so please do that. So let's get into our topics today. The first thing I wanted us to talk about, this has been a very talked about thing on the internet in recent days, is that The New Yorker did a long feature on actor Jeremy Strong, who I think many people might know as Kendall in the show Succession. He's also been a successful character actor in a lot of other things. You've definitely seen him. And the feature is interesting because this gentleman, Mr. Jeremy Strong, is intense. He's intense in the way that he talks about acting and his craft. There's intense stories about the way he is on set. We get to, I don't even know if it's shade thrown, but there's some very honest accounts given by his castmates. And I think that the online reaction to this has been interesting, because on one hand, you have people, I think especially people that maybe like don't know a lot of actors, who think it is batshit crazy. And we'll read some of the quotes and stuff like that. I've seen responses from other people who, let's say, are based in LA or work adjacent to film and television, who are like, it's not really that big of a deal. Like, this is a thing that happens. People act like this. Artists are weird. We'll start with, I'll start with one quote, and we'll jump around a bit. I'm very curious to what y'all think about this. This is early on in the feature when Jeremy Strong was talking about playing Kendall in Succession. He said, "To me, the stakes are life and death. I take him as seriously as I take my own life." The author then says, he does not find the character funny, which is probably why he's so funny in the role. So I'm curious. Well, right off the bat, are either of y'all Succession watchers?
Yes.
Okay, so you're familiar with his role as Kendall.
Yes. And reading this profile, I was like, oh, is he not acting? I was like, this is him? So that was amazing to me. I was like, oh, wow. I just thought he was such a great actor, but I think that's just him.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to tell, like, if it's just him or if he has that intent. You almost wonder reading that, like, where is his self?
Mm-hmm.
Because he has this ability to just become characters and commit to them on such a deep psychological level. I think that was the thing, at least when I was reading that profile, wondering who is the real Jeremy Strong.
Mm-hmm.
And all we learn about him for real is that he's like a big foodie, and at various points of his life, he's owned 5 luxury clothing items, and that's it.
And he's great friends with Michelle Williams and lived with her rent-free off and on for 3 years.
Yes. We could all.
And is friends with like a ton of celebrities, like weird number of celebrities.
Yeah. Raymond, in general, what's your familiarity with the work of one Jeremy Strong?
Of Jeremy Strong? Well, I've seen a few episodes of Succession, and I enjoy it. I just don't watch much TV, but I'm slowly working my way through it. And up until then, my familiarity with him was you'd kind of see him in a role here and there. And I had begun to recognize his face, but I didn't know his name until on an episode of Show Me the Meaning, one of the folks in the chat, we read the chat, by the way, everyone, said that I
Oh my God.
I looked like a bald Jeremy Strong, I think.
Oh my God.
Wow.
I'm seeing it in the most recent episode of Succession, he shaves his head. It's like the exact level of yours, and now I see it. Oh my God.
And
Whoa.
I don't know. I think Jeremy Strong's a handsome guy. I choose to take it as a compliment.
Yeah.
But I didn't know who he was by name, so I Googled him. I was like, oh, it's that guy. And that's more or less my response to anything that he's in. And I think that's kind of maybe something we can get into with this profile, is that, it as long as okay, have at it. It may turn off some other folks on set, but it doesn't seem like anyone's mad at him. This isn't like Jared Leto doing the Joker where he's like sending people a rat in the mail or whatever. So the thing that I think is kind of funny about it is that with people who are really devoted to this stuff and who are really intense, the best possible response that they could get is, oh, he's really intense. He's really, he's one of the greats and he's really focused. And on the other side, I think some method actor types might be okay with hearing the opposite, which is we're really uncomfortable around him, but that's what he's trying to do. And I think that maybe it's like how the opposite of love isn't hate, it's apathy. I kind of get that vibe from a lot of his castmates in this profile, where it seems like the worst possible response that he would want, which is just Kieran Culkin shrugging his shoulders and being like, I don't know, he just does whatever. We don't like it's fine, I guess. And that's more or less my take on him as an actor. Is I've never once seen him in anything and thought like, wow, this is the next Daniel Day-Lewis or the next Al Pacino. I always just thought, oh, I think I recognize him from Lincoln or whatever.
Yeah,
Somewhere
I think it's like
part of his soul just died.
Yeah, I'm sure he listens to this. It is an interesting part of, I guess, the background of the story. And I'm sure many people listening have heard this before, but just in case, a lot of the stuff he's talking about is adjacent to what is called method acting. Method acting is when a actor sort of embodies that character in their real life to do a better job of acting as that person. There's an anecdote in this New Yorker article about Daniel Day-Lewis years ago being in a movie where his character would have built the shack he lived in. So Daniel Day-Lewis insisted on showing up early to help the crew build the shack in which he would have lived. Other actors will famously, whether it's lose a lot of weight, gain a lot of weight, speak only in the accent of that character, start to take on their habits and hobbies, all this sort of stuff. And as Brian Cox says in the article, he thinks of it as a very American thing. Now, Jeremy Strong in this article kind of disassociates from method acting as such. He says this. He says, far from minding his own life, well, this is the interviewer, he practices what he calls identity diffusion. He says, if I have any method at all, it's simply this: to clear away anything that is not the character and the circumstances of the scene, he explained. And usually that means clearing away almost everything around and inside you, so that you can be a more complete vessel for the work at hand. And I'll read one more chunk. This is from Brian Cox, who I love. Brian Cox said, the result that Jeremy gets is always pretty tremendous. I just worry about what he does to himself. I worry about the crisis he puts himself through in order to prepare. Cox, a classically trained British actor, has a turn it on, turn it off approach to acting. And his relationship with Strong, here, I'm going to skip ahead and he says this. Cox says, actors are funny creatures. I've worked with intense actors before. It's a particularly American disease, I think. The inability to separate yourself off while you're doing the job. And I found that very interesting. Like, the idea that Brian Cox, who's a British actor from Scotland, would associate that type of acting with Americans. And just in general, that notion of a particularly American disease, the inability to separate oneself from their job, which I think maybe applies to more people than just actors. But I'm curious what y'all think about that.
Serby?
That resonated with me as well when he said that, or when I read that. I I just don't understand method acting as well. Like in general, I don't understand how like your job is to act. So, and I think this is also written in the article. Like, why don't you just act? Um,
Yeah.
so I think
That's
I just
a
don't,
Laurence Olivier quote. Yeah.
Yeah.
like I just don't understand it. Like, why do you have to like sit in a dark room and like talk to yourself in a mirror? I think I read that like some actor did that for like 3 weeks or whatever. Like, why do you have to do that? Why can't you just
Sure.
act?
I think there are degrees to it. You know, that this article cites Daniel Day-Lewis a lot, who is considered not only like one of the great screen actors maybe of all time, but he's also kind of the poster child for method acting. You know, he's won a mantle full of Oscars, and there's always some story, like Michael said, you know, about what he does to get into character. He's one of my favorite actors. In his what he claims to be his last movie, he's stuck by it so far that he's retired after Phantom Thread. He plays a couture designer in that film. He makes and tailors dresses in that. And in order to prepare for that, he sewed his own dress. He used a different design, but he according to that template, he went through and tailored a dress by hand. And when you watch the movie, there are close-ups of his hands, and they look like, now I'm no seamstress, but they look like what I would imagine his hands look like. They're very calloused, and there are hangnails, and there are places that have clearly been pricked by needles and stuff like that. So I do think that these sorts of approaches, or these kind of approaches to acting, can lend a certain verisimilitude. But then I read something like this in the Jeremy Strong profile, where he goes, before season 3 started shooting, he was vacationing in Bora Bora and rode a flight board, a motorized surfboard that provides a precarious sense of flight. He brought that sensation to Kendall. He told me he thinks he's flying, but he's about to fall any second. And there's this weird thing that runs through the article that's like, I get what he's going for, but it's all so like hyper literal, and it doesn't. It comes back to that thing you said, Serby, which is that, like, could you not better imagine if you were more in touch with your own emotions and the way that you interact with people both on and offset, to know what it's like to feel a sense of precarity in a relationship, rather than having to go on some crazy fucking surfboard or whatever the thing is?
Yeah, like I just feel like, do you lack emotional intelligence? Because a lot of this I feel like could, like, if you were just highly empathetic or you had like high EQ, you would be able to do something like that. And I do think that like part of acting is like building skills and practicing and like rehearsing and things like that. So I get wanting to like practice your accent or like practice like walking around and things like that, but having to like somebody like shave down their teeth, I think I read in the
Robert De
article.
Niro,
Robert De
Cape
Niro.
Fear.
Right. Like
Yeah.
why? Like why would you do that? I don't understand things like that.
Jamie
Yeah.
Foxx did that in The Soloist too. I think he did something to his teeth. I don't know.
Classic
Yeah.
method actor, Jamie Foxx. Yeah. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because I think a lot of this too just ties into this broader cultural association we have with sort of misery and creativity. This idea that we often fetishize the tortured artist, and whether it's, you know, in music, it's often, ooh, this person got bad when they became a non-drug addict or something like that, or ooh, you have to be in despair to write good songs, or this novelist was the most miserable woman ever and that's why her work is so good, or whatever it might be. And I think there's something interesting about, and I think recently this narrative has been busted up a little bit in a few different ways. Like one of my favorite songwriters, Jeff Tweedy, was addicted to drugs and very sad for a lot of years, and like got happy and now just has like a good relationship with his wife and his kids, and is like a functional person and goes on hiking trips and still makes like really good music. I had the pleasure the other night of seeing Paul Thomas Anderson speak after a screening of his new movie, and he talked about like being this like cynical, angry artist, and now just being like a happy guy that loves hanging out with his kids and wanted to make a movie and appreciates people appreciating his art, and came across as a very, you know, normal dude. And I think even Daniel Day-Lewis, who is a method actor, you do hear stories of him, though. I never met him. I don't think any of us have. But I've heard that he's a decent hang. Like he's like a normal guy, offset. People like him.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
With Jeremy Strong, it feels like a little bit maybe like it's to quote the old Chappelle sketch, like when keeping it real goes wrong, that it seems like the intensity maybe doesn't turn off when he's offset. But at the same time, I hear what Serby was just saying, but it's also like, I don't know, actors are weird. I think one of the weirdest things about actors is I've been in situations before with an actor who can play a normal person, but then they're crazy in real life. And you're like, oh, so you can play just like a normal person that hangs, but then when I talk to you and you're not acting, you're so weird. And I think that maybe in a sense, we want a level of normalcy from artists that maybe sometimes they're not going to give us. And I think sometimes we might even forget that actors, not all actors are artists, right? Like people, many sitcom actors, or whoever, they're not artists. They're like funny people who are good at reading lines. I think someone like Jeremy Strong thinks of himself as an artist and maybe puts himself through too much, but the results are solid. So I don't know. I think part of me is hesitant to do the full freak out over this, but would I want to work with him? No.
Maybe not. It reminds me of the Steve Martin. Steve Martin had a quote a while back. I can't remember in what interview or maybe one of his books, but he said something to the effect of, great movies can aspire to be great art, but if you set out to make great art, you're kind of dooming yourself to failure. And I'm paraphrasing, but I think about that a lot because, once again, a lot of the stuff in this profile seems pretty harmless. I think maybe he's getting a bad rap, and they even mentioned that he is a bit of a family man, and maybe he's just a little bit difficult on set. But it's not as though anyone has accused him of like verbal or physical or abuse or anything like that. And even Brian Cox at one point just says, I kind of just worry about him and I don't want him to take things too far thinking that he has to.
Yeah, I don't have the tweet in front of me, but this morning Jessica Chastain tweeted something like, I've known Jeremy for 20 years. I've worked with him twice. That article is super one-sided. He's a great guy. I love working with him. Don't believe everything you read. And maybe that's a little bit of like actors getting each other's backs. But it was interesting to see friend of the show, Jessica Chastain, make that statement.
But this article also feels, regardless of how he might feel about it, this article also kind of has a print the legend kind of vibe to it. You know, he participated in it. I'm sure that they're obviously indexing a lot of this off of his energy, and maybe it's unflattering at points, but at the end of the day, it's still, I think, kind of communicating what he wants to communicate as an artist, which is that I take my work seriously, and you know, I hope other people take me seriously as well.
Yeah. The last thing I'll say before we move off this topic, just because I think this is the culture bingy thing to say, is I do think it's interesting when Brian Cox connects this to Americans, because I think in a way there's a seed of what we have in Jeremy Strong. And I think it maybe makes sense as an actor in a lot of other fields. You know, I think that sometimes we can all have that tendency to want to perform our job and think of our job as this inextricably linked like part of our consciousness and our soul, if we want to use those terms. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think the danger lies. And I think that it makes more sense to me for like an actor or a painter or whatever it might be to have their identity so connected to their craft. I think it gets dangerous when it's like, I'm in social media marketing and that's who I am, or I sell real estate and that's my soul. And I do think that is a very American thing.
It's also that thing of like, it's, you know, there's this strain in a lot of artistic thought that some folks maybe assume that if it isn't difficult or tortured or anguished, then it isn't valid in a way. And I think maybe that's because we have this weird stereotype of like the tortured genius or whatever, and it's just a lot more easy to be tortured than it is to be a genius. So it's kind of like that thing of just going for the surface elements of what we see in popular media and just hoping that, well, you know, if you fake genius, eventually you'll make genius. Who knows?
Yeah. Well, and that there, check out the profile if you haven't. It's in the New York Times. The New Yorker. Even if you don't watch Succession or know a lot about Jeremy Strong, it's genuinely a really good read. Before we move on really quick, Dudabide says Serby French fry mukbang 2022. So we know who Dudabide is voting for in 2022. Voting for the Serby French fry mukbang. Now, I think we're talking about people who brand themselves, the fear of Americans especially tying themselves to who they are in terms of what they do. But I think this is also a thing that comes up in what we consume. And this is a lead into the second thing I wanted to talk about today, which is the increasing cultural phenomenon of the Spotify Wrapped. which is the thing Spotify does every December. They've done this for 6 years now, where at the end of the year, they tell you who you are, what you listen to, and what percentile you are of people that listen to certain artists, what moods you had. This year we got what our aura was. And it's a thing that they've made it easier and easier every year to share this. So I don't know about you all, but on December 1st, much of my Twitter and Instagram feed were people posting what their Spotify Wrapped results were, who they had been listening to, what their aura was, all these sort of things. So let me start with this. Are either of you Spotify users?
No, I use YouTube.
Wow. Company person right there. Sticking to the brand. I love it. Raymond, are you a Spotify guy?
I am an Apple Music boy.
Wow,
never had a Spotify subscription.
What is happening? How am I the only person on here? So then, well, I guess you all can talk from a objective journalistic perspective. I'm going to speak from the position of someone who on December 1st was like, where's that? I have a weird connection with Spotify, and this is horrible, like screw brands. But I first got Spotify. I forget what year Spotify was available in United States of America. I first got it, I think, in 2007 or 2008 because I was living in Europe then, and it wasn't available in America. But I had it downloaded, so when I would go back to America, it would still work for me. And I remember like showing friends like, hey, look at this. It's all the music and you don't have to pay for it. And it's, wow, this is the future. And let me preface all of this too by saying Spotify is bad for bands and independent artists. If you really care about music you listen to and you want to support artists, you should buy concert tickets, buy music, buy merch. If it's like Beyonce or Billie Eilish or Jay-Z or the Foo Fighters, who cares? Listen to them on Spotify all day. They have $1 bazillion. But just a reminder, so no one gets at me for that, because an issue around Spotify Wrapped as well is that thing. But one of the interesting things this year with Spotify Wrapped is that they said things that were very online. Some of the copy in Spotify Wrapped was like, you and Bestie don't know what NFTs are, bae, but you got these tunes though. That's a slight exaggeration, but it was very specific. They talked about like your auras and things like that. And one of the things that's culturally interesting about Spotify Wrapped is it's people gleefully celebrating that a corporation has lots of data about them, and that the data allows the corporation to tell the person about who they are. And then we, the consumer, are both gleefully excited about the data set the corporation has about us. And then we share the amalgamated data the corporation has on us, thus giving free advertising to the multi-billion-dollar corporation as well. And I think in so many other spaces, and especially on the internet these days, things like that are very not cool to do, but we love doing this. So I'm curious if either of y'all, as external, objective, non-Spotify brained journalist, can speak to why you think we do this, why those of us infected by the Spotify bug are so happy that this corporation has our data and are so willing to share the data the corporation has on us.
Because people are obsessed with themselves and they love learning what other people have learned about them. People just love themselves. I don't know. That's what I walk away with. Like, yeah. Even like Facebook used to do something, I think, or maybe they still do, like every year it would be like your year and on Facebook, mm-hmm. and it would do that sort of something similar. And people just love that shit.
So a question for you, sir. Do you think it's just straight up narcissism, or do you think it's this desire for identity, this need to have like an external source tell us who we are? And maybe I'm describing narcissism in two ways. I think there might be a difference. I'm curious if you think it's just good old fashioned narcissism or something like this search for identity.
I think, yeah, the search for identity is interesting. I think that could be it. We all feel like, isn't there this whole thing like everybody feels like a snowflake now? And I think being able to see your year in review and have somebody tell you like what your aura is, what your vibe is, or mood is, or whatever. I think people identify with that. Like Jeremy Strong, I feel like would be really interested in this sort of thing.
Well, I think what you guys have talked about so far brings up a different question for me, which is that is the issue with Spotify Wrapped just doing like what I think is just kind of a fun little thing at the end of the year. Tells you a little bit about your listening habits. Letterboxd does the same thing. I get an email, and I can track my stats throughout the year. Which directors did I watch the most? All that sort of stuff. Or is the inclination to share it online, is that the thing that really sticks in your craw about all of this? Because in my mind, I remember a friend of mine in high school saying that he thought heaven was just a big file room where he could just flip through a bunch of old documents to see like how many peanut butter and jellies he ate during his life and shit like that. And that was heaven to him. He just liked the notion of being able to see which stats he had run up over the course of his life, and he just found that notion fascinating. I don't necessarily think that's something narcissistic or, that you have to be obsessed with yourself to be curious about like, oh, I didn't realize I listened to that album that many times. But it is weird to me, the notion of like, oh wow, I can't wait to tell all my friends how much I loved these 5 albums or whatever. I mean, in most circumstances, Serby, anytime you're excited about an album or a song such as Bells, Bows, Gifts, Trees by Tadra Call, you just let me know, because we're close personal friends and we talk all the time off mic.
So Smutta in the chat says all other platforms have such data anyways. At least by Spotify Wrapped, we get something interesting from it. I like that as a kind of pragmatic take on this. But it is interesting, though, this obsession with sharing stuff. I feel like, all of us are online to some extent. We all have social media accounts. I'm probably the most brain-wormed out of the 3 of us. And by that, I mean, I find myself regularly, let's say on Twitter, writing something, and maybe it's something that's about like what I'm doing or what I'm thinking or what I'm watching, and then I will sometimes ask myself, like, why am I sharing this? Like, is it because consciously or unconsciously I want to present myself as someone that watches this thing, eats that thing, is thinking about that thing? And I think there is that fine line between, I don't know, participating in conversation and culture and just sharing data so the world sees us a certain way. I had the issue with Spotify Wrapped this year in which I thought my number 1 artist would be the Grateful Dead, and it wasn't. And I was like, how can I share this now? When some of my good friends had that. At the same time, when I got my Spotify Wrapped top 5 artist, I felt very, I guess, cool by my own standards, because my music was basically just Grateful Dead and rap music. And I was like, yeah, because that's who I am. I'm a guy that only listens to the music of the Grateful Dead and then sort of obscure artsy rap music. And there's a part of you that can feel cool about it. Or you get the little stat that's like, you're in the top 0.1% of people that listen to this artist. And I do think like there is this, I don't know, I think we all have this drive for identity. Like we want to be a thing. We want to fit a category. We want to have this defining thing. And I think the maybe evil genius of Spotify is that they do that. There's a quote from the Vox article about this, which we'll link in the description, that says, our collective enumeration with this recap reveals the extent to which algorithms have become integrated into the way we conceive of ourselves in digital consumer culture as brands to be refined. And it does seem like this is another example of the way in which we are all brands now, and we want to see our brand data and refine our personal brand, which, I don't know, maybe is bad, maybe isn't bad.
Yeah, and I think the thing too that you touched on at the beginning that we've kind of gone down a different road a little bit is the way that brands have sort of in reverse, as people have tried to become brands themselves, the brands have tried to become more personable. And like you said, the Spotify Wrapped thing this year was all delivered in some apparently kind of annoying or frustrating, I don't know what the word is, some strange online verbiage. Serby, I'm curious, as someone who works in tech, do you think that stuff is kind of like pervasive behind the scenes, or is it all just an affected sort of front facing thing?
No. We collect everything.
No. I mean like the way that brand, like the brand saying Bay account on Twitter, where it's like, there's always someone running, like there's a comedian running Wendy's and a comedian running Burger King, and they get into little scuffles on Twitter so that they can both up their engagement or whatever.
Oh yeah. So that's all like highly orchestrated. They've probably had like agencies come in and tell them what they should do. Um, they probably spent hundreds of thousands of dollars figuring these sorts of things out. So
Yeah, it's cynical stuff. I mean, these are brands that are using like AI and algorithms to mine our data, to create data sets, to sell that data, to sell things back to us that then want to act like they're our friend or speak in language that we love so that we'll then retweet it or interact with them and all these things. Like it's wild. There's a quote from the Vox article in which a scholar says, "Meet AI culture, the new age of digitized capitalism, where the consumer is endlessly stuck in their own feedback loop." And like the feedback loop thing is really what got me, in that like our data gets used to tell us who we are. Then that data sells us stuff that we then buy or consume, which further tells us who we are in this endless loop of personalized brand building and like the digitalized consumer consciousness. And it's scary. Sometimes it's like, yeah, I wish I just went to record stores and bought a record and listened to it and didn't tell anyone what I listened to. But if they came over, I would say, would you like to listen to this together and have a communal moment of shared artistic appreciation that doesn't involve me sharing this moment on social media? But I can't do that.
Yeah, I'm curious maybe this is a bigger question or totally sort of a tangent, but what do you guys think in terms of like, there's that old question of, is there such a thing as a benevolent act? Because in some way you get satisfaction out of giving satisfaction to someone else. Is there such a thing as art for art's sake? Do folks only create today as a means of either economic empowerment or attention seeking or brand engagement? I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
I think there's moments of art these days. I think they're harder to find. And for me, at least, I feel like most of the moments that I find to be truly creative and feeling like I'm doing a part of something artsy is live performance. Whether it's live theater or live music, there's times where it's just an experience that can't be captured any other way than that immediate experience. And I think there's something that feels special about that. And especially if it's like a concert or a production of a play or something, you look around that room, and I think it does build the sense of community around the idea that we are here, we're all in this moment. No, even if you recorded this moment, you couldn't capture what's happening right now. Mm. And I still find something special about that, and something, yeah. So to me, those are moments where I feel like there is something like art that still happens.
What do you think, Serby?
That's perfect. That was beautifully articulated, and I have nothing to add to that.
Because you're a symphony goer, right, Serby?
Yeah, I go to the symphony and the opera. I like theater, stuff like that. So I feel I like to be fully immersed and present, and I like the idea of what you said, that it's sort of like a collective, like a shared experience, and we're all just doing it together and feeling different things but seeing the same thing. There's something magical about that, sitting in a room full of people who are also experiencing the same thing you are.
And do you ever feel in those moments that the artists are truly giving themselves over to the audience, or are they just a bunch of Jeremy Strongs who are just up there trying to make themselves feel good?
No, it feels pure. It feels almost like they're doing it for themselves, and we get a peek into what they're doing, like especially opera performances or the symphony, like things like that. Like they do it because they love it, and in the moment they're feeling it so much more intensely than we are. And I feel like a voyeur, like looking into something that's very intimate and personal, and it feels like a privilege to be able to see something like that.
Yeah. I went to a concert a while back of First Aid Kit. I don't know if you know them. They're a singer-songwriter duo. They're sisters. And it was I can't remember what the venue was in Los Angeles, but it was a good sized crowd, but still small enough that they came to the edge of the stage at one point, past the microphones, and they just did one song. One of my favorite songs of theirs called Ghost Town, and they did it with no microphones, just on an acoustic guitar, and they just asked that everyone be respectful and quiet during that. And it was a transcendent moment. It was something that was really magical, and like you guys said, you could never capture that on an album. You could never capture that through an intermediary.
Okay, well, this is going to be our early December Culture Binge challenge then. If you're listening to this right now, you're watching this right now, what we want to challenge you to do is either find some type of live art happening where you live. It could be music, whether it's classical music, jazz music, folk music, punk music, dark Satanist metal music, upbeat Christian pop punk, whatever it is. Find some music and go see it. Or find some theater or live comedy or some sort of artistic creation where there's people doing a thing and you're in the room while they're doing it. I get that maybe that's something you don't feel vibey with right now because you're terrified about the Omarion variant, or maybe you
But if
live
you've
in a
had those
really
experiences in the past, right in.
yeah. And I would say another thing you could do is, I don't know, maybe invite some friends over and like listen to an album you really like and just listen to it start to finish and hang out. Do drugs, don't do drugs, sit down, stand up, dance, don't dance. Do something together, see how it feels. I don't know. That could be fun. And then don't tell the internet that you did it. Keep it a secret. Non-algorithmic musical artistic experiences. And we'll all try to do that soon too, and we can report back. But that said, God, I love Spotify, Dad. I love the internet telling me who I am. It feels so good. So before we get into our mailbag segment, I think, Serby, I think I stopped you earlier. You were going to say a chap, and then I told you not to. I totally forgot that happened. Would you like to share?
You also cut off my chap too, but I think we may have the same chap.
Yeah. So, Serby, would you like to share another chap with everyone?
Yes. So my chap is that I will be leaving Culture Binge. This is my second to last episode. I am leaving because I've realized that I'm a workaholic and I don't like that about myself. And one of the best ways to stop being a workaholic is to decrease the number of extracurricular activities I do. And one of those is Culture Binge. And there's a long list of other things that I do outside of my full-time job. So unfortunately, Culture Binge has to take a backseat in my life right now while I'm on the road to recovery, and then so that I can stop working like 70-hour weeks. But I love Culture Binge. I have been on every episode except 3.
Wow.
The first episode I was not on because that was just Alec and Jared. And then I missed one episode when I was on vacation, and Jacob sat in for me on that one. And then I missed one in October of this year. So every single episode except 3, and it's been magical. I've been a part of Wisecrack, I think, since 2014. I co-wrote Thug Notes with Jared, and then was just in the ecosystem doing little things behind the scenes. So I'm really sad, but I'm hoping that next year I can come back to Culture Binge here and there if I'm welcome, so I can see all of you. And I really liked it all. Oh gosh, now I feel kind of emotional. I really liked when people write in. I'll miss the emails the most. I read them a lot, and I really like when people, when you all write like what we would be, like all the different things we would be. And I really like the fan art. Holy shit, I can't even tell you how much I love the fan art that people sent in. I send it to my friends and I'm like, oh gosh, I thought that I would be sending you nudes, but these are so much better. Like, still really disappointed that nobody's made a deep fake nude of me. So if somebody's
don't
out
say
there,
that. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
Yeah, prepare for an onslaught.
Oh no, our inbox is gonna be so problematic.
But really though, I loved all of it, and I'm so grateful to have had this opportunity. So thank you.
Well, Serby, bracketing the fact that it's sad, we're gonna miss you. You're the best. Truly, I can't think of anyone in this world I feel like I know more about that I've still never met in person. But I think something that's very cool is we do talk a lot on the show about work and culture and the pressures of culture and capitalism and all these sorts of things. And I just think as much as it individually sucks that you're not going to be here, I think what you're doing stands by Culture Binge principles, which is recognizing sometimes that like the culture can run us into the ground and we can feel this pressure to work too much and do too much. And I think what you're doing is the sort of behavior I hope that all of us and all of our audience is doing, which is remembering that like you as a person and your time and your health matter so much more than work and extra work and social media and making content, all these sorts of things, that real life matters more than all of this. So we're just happy that you are putting the real Serby first and your happiness and health first. So, and you'll always be welcome back. We'll give you some space, but once you're feeling good, we'll have you back on. But I wanted to say that as well this week and not next week, because if anyone does want to have any last fan art, deep fake nudes, probably don't do that. Or just anything for Serby. We'd love to hear it before our next episode. You can hit us up at culturebinge@wisecrack.co or call us at 213-534-8807. Once again, that's culturebinge@wisecrack.co. Call us at 213-534-8807. We will make sure next week or next episode that there is time. So if you have anything you want to say to Serby, you can do that. We'll also drop our social media stuff at the end so you can tweet about how much you'll miss Serby. But feels weird now. Is it cool, Serby, in this moment if we'll hit some emails real quick for your second to last email segment? Okay, great. Here's one from Donovan. Donovan says, longtime listener, first-time caller. I'm incredibly anxious all the time, but we're out here doing stuff, so here I am. I'm a counseling grad school student who's trying to make his way through grad school. I listen to you folks all the time on my commute or when doing homework. I was just wondering if you guys have any tips for how to manage stress. Quit your podcast. Thank you, and have a great day. Yeah. So how about real quick? Let's start with you, Raymond. I don't know. You have any tips for managing stress? If not, that's fine, but.
Yeah, I mean, a ton of them. I would say go to therapy if you're capable. And even if it's something that you can only afford once or twice, just a few sessions can help give you emotional tools to help deal with things on your own. Not necessarily on your own. You're never on your own, but Serby mentioned emotional intelligence during the Jeremy Strong profile, and I think we can all do some work on our own. It may be tough to raise our emotional IQ score here and there, but it's well worth it. It definitely gives you the tools to manage things, those little bumps in the road as they come, and helps you keep things in perspective when the big bumps in the road start to hit. So that's one thing off the top of my head.
I'll be quick and let Serby go last because I bet she'll have the best advice out of any of us. I mean, I think one thing with stress, this might sound kind of counterintuitive. Remember that nothing really matters that much. If you are not an emergency room doctor or a rescue pilot, most of what most of us do in any given day, the stakes are so much lower than we tell ourselves they are. We always convince ourselves that the stakes of everything we're working on is so high, and often they're not, and that's okay. So sometimes it's important to step back, give yourself a little room, and realize like the stakes aren't as high as I'm making them. It's all okay, and that you're gonna get through it. I know Raymond said this, especially because you're in a counseling program. I have to imagine there's some access you have to free or cheap therapy. So hopefully you're doing that. And I just think the other two things, I know for me, these are different for everyone. Two things that I find really helpful. One, taking walks. If I feel very stressed, if work's overwhelming, I'll sometimes just take a 15-minute walk around the neighborhood. I'll try to not look at a screen and just disconnect a little bit. And the other thing that I find really helpful is breathing. There's like box breathing where you go like 3 to 4 seconds in and out in these breaks. Stuff like that's really helpful. So, but figure out what works for you. Serby, how can Donovan be a little less stressed?
Well, speaking as someone who has been consistently stressed out for the last 4 years, here we go. I agree with deep breathing. I think that's super helpful. But the most important thing to remember is that you do deep breathing when you are not stressed out so that your body creates a baseline. If you do it when you are stressed out or you're anxious, you'll just hyperventilate. So make sure you do deep breathing throughout the year or throughout your time. Practice mindfulness. So mindfulness is the practice of being present in a moment. So there are different types of mindfulness. Like it could be like mindful eating. Like when you eat something, you focus on the textures, the colors, what it feels like, what it looks like, what it, like are there imperfections, things like that. There's also mindful walking. So you go for a walk, you look around, you look at your surroundings, you hear what's happening. So look up different aspects of mindfulness. Identifying your emotions and feelings is another thing. So if suddenly you feel a spike of stress or anxiety, try to reflect back on what you were thinking about. Like, what was it that caused you to suddenly feel this way? It could be like an email you're avoiding, or maybe an assignment you haven't done, or the fact that you have to see your family during the holidays. Like, it could be anything. So identifying your emotions can help a lot, because then once you do it, you can kind of put it to the side. Letter writing, or just writing stuff down and journaling, is a great way because it gets things out of you. So rather than letting things like just bounce around in your head, you can just get it on paper. Exercise is fantastic, because you start to release, you decrease like cortisol, which is like a stress hormone, not hormone.
Yeah.
It's stress hormone, right? Yeah.
Something like that.
So,
Let's call it that. It sounds
yeah.
good.
So I think it's a stress hormone. And you increase like dopamine and other things like that. So exercise is fantastic, even if you just do it like 10 minutes a day, going for a walk, running, whatever you want to do. Try to exercise every day. That'll help you a lot. There's an exercise called Leaves on a Stream. It's a guided meditation. The idea is that there's a stream in the forest and there are leaves, and each time a leaf passes you by, you imagine putting a stressful experience, something that makes you anxious, a thought, whatever it is, you put it on the leaf and then you watch it flow down the stream. So if you just Google Leaves on a Stream exercise, you'll be able to find some of those. Pleasant activities are important. So you have to balance out your life. So whether you go to a concert, if you go to a restaurant, if you just want to watch TV or whatever you want to do, you have to do pleasant activities. For me, taking a nap helps me a lot. I also realize that standing under hot water helps me. So I usually take
Also called showering.
It's not even just, I mean, I shower twice a day, but like sometimes even just during the day after like a really stressful call, I have to stand under hot water and just let my face be under like really hot water. And watching TV, I like to disconnect a lot because I have to think and make decisions all day long. And the last thing I can do is make another decision. So highly recommend Emily in Paris. So there are a lot of different things you can email in. Again, if you want more, I'm at baseline, I've mentioned it before, a very anxious and nervous person. So I have a lot of techniques.
Well, thank you for sharing all that. I'm sure Donovan's going to love it. A couple more emails really quick. Fernando, responding to the topic about highly sensitive people, noted that they are a highly sensitive person, that this has led them in work to stepping away from a leadership position that had higher pay because of the stress. And at the end of their email, they say, finally, I'd like to share what I do about the news of the world being too overwhelming. I don't know if it could help anyone. And this might be helpful for Donovan, too. Fernando says, but I find that Stoic philosophy helps a lot in that regard, not shying away from distressing events, but trying to face them with serenity. I know that's easier said than done. So an exercise that I think helped me into that headspace is going to a very busy location. For me, it was bus stations back when I had to travel a lot, and just sitting down and focusing on everything going on around me. I know that sounds horrifying for people who are highly sensitive to stimuli, but being in a place where nothing was expected of me, I found I could let myself be immersed in the torrent of stimuli and let them wash over me to a soothing effect. Not trying to distance myself from it, but actually paying attention to everything at once, not to any one person or noise in particular. I don't know if that could be a form of meditation, but it certainly felt like it. So thank you, Fernando, for sharing that. And that like truly does sound like a very interesting and smart way, especially in a busy urban environment, to like find some serenity within the chaos.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Last email we'll look at, this is from, I think, Oli or Ollie. Apologies if I'm saying it wrong. And this is responding to us talking about the toxic conditions in sort of startups and toxic positivity in episode 64. They recently started working at a startup and said, the first thing I noticed was this kind of toxic positivity you discussed. Everyone always seemed to be in a great mood, which appeared rather unnatural. Everything is always great and awesome, and every employee is treated like they themselves are an essential part of the company. This, for me, brings many many problems. First of all, it seems that with the omnipresent positivity, you're not allowed to complain about anything because that's not the energy that the startup wants. Secondly, and this is what bugs me the most, they treat employees as if they would directly benefit from the revenue created, when in truth, we still earn the same salary regardless of the growth of the company. I myself am an intern and still take part in the weekly meeting where all financial numbers are discussed. We are all encouraged to work hard and bring these numbers up, but I think that's total bullshit. One can clearly see that the company is about exploiting labor for profit when an entire department, the one I work in, is being worked on by interns such as I. Anyway, I realize I don't want to work 100% for not even half the salary customary for this job and will now quit and look for a new job. So all I can say is, one part of that, I know we already talked about this on a whole episode, the part that hits with that is it's crazy when companies you work for send out emails that are like, the profits are up, we're making this much money, that's great. And it's like, if you're just on salary and don't have shares in the company, this doesn't matter, and don't tell me about it. And
it's
I'm not going
to
yeah, I'm not going to say the company I work for has done this recently, but I'm not going to say they didn't. And it's just like absurd. If anything, lie to me. Don't tell me that you're making all these profits if I don't get a part in them. And yeah, working's rough.
So, pro tip, if you work at a startup and you do not have shares or equity or anything, you should look for another job. Get your experience and move the fuck on.
Yeah, I like it. Or be like me and work for a startup at one point where you get equity and then the company collapses. So you were just putting some of your money into equity that meant nothing. But hey, life's all about risks. It's all about risk. But thank you for those emails. Again, please hit us up with responses to this episode, with any messages you have for Serby at culturebinge@wisecrack.co. That's culturebinge@wisecrack.co, or call us. No one ever calls us, but we say the number every time anyways, at 213-534-8807. That is 213-534-8807. Before we go, thank you as always to Raymond Creamer for hanging out with us. We really appreciate it. And if you don't already listen to our movie podcast, Show Me the Meaning, I recommend it. You should go listen to the one from a couple weeks ago that I got to be on where we talked about the movie Step Brothers.
It was a great time.
Now, if you want to get in touch with Raymond and Serby outside of this context, Serby, where can people find you on the internet?
Serby Patel 22 on Twitter.
Raymond, where can people track you down on the World Wide Web of Wonder?
You can find me on Twitter and Letterboxd. I'm at Crematoria, and I would also like to get the Serby fan mail parade started. Serby, it's been a pleasure listening to you over the years, and it was an honor to get to do a few episodes with you. I can only speak for myself, but I will miss you.
Oh, that's so sweet of you. Thank you.
No, thank you.
I'll save my deep Serby thoughts for 2 weeks from now, where I might get emotional. You can find me on Twitter at Michael O. Burns. Instagram, put underscores around the O. I'll remember this. I am on Letterboxd. I'm trying to use it more. I think it's like Burns 42069 or something really adult like that. So I have a very adult
something very mature
or something
Those
silly
numbers
like that.
sound familiar.
No, it's like it's my favorite verse from the scriptures. Technically, okay. So we will be back in 2 weeks. Join us then. In the meantime, take care of yourself, everyone. Just take care of yourself. Remember that nothing matters except finding a joy and beauty in your life and around those you love. Stay warm for those that live in cold climates, and goodbye.